All right, in your reading yesterday, you read the story called Bubbles. So if you did not read Bubbles, you are at the wrong place. So go back and click another video to watch. But you should have read the book Bubbles. And in that story, we learned where we can see bubbles. And we learned that we can see bubbles different ways and in different things. And so today, we're going to talk a little bit how to sort that information. So sometimes when we are reading, we are given information and we have to figure out where that information needs to go. And that's what we're going to do today in our work. So I'm going to flip the camera around and let's see. Flip it here if I can do it. Okay, so in our reading, we read that some bubbles float. We've learned that bubbles can stick. And we've learned that there are bubbles in solids. Okay, and a solid is like something that is like concrete. It's like oh goodness, I'm having a hard time here. Something that is just like thick. It's not something that can be changed to a different form. Okay. And so what I want you to do today in your work is I want you to look back in the story and I want you to draw a picture or write a sentence or a phrase and tell me from the reading, where did you find or what is a kind of bubble that floats? Okay, in our reading, we read something about that. So what is an example of a bubble that floats? Like all of these are bubbles that we read about, but bubbles can have different forms. They can look differently. So I want you to draw or tell me about, from the reading, a set of bubbles that float. And then I want you to find an example of bubbles that stick. So in our reading, we read that there are certain kinds of bubbles that can stick to things or stick on things. So I want you to draw a picture or write what that would be. And then bubbles in solids. If you have a solid thing, when can you see bubbles in it? I want you to draw a picture of that. So all three of these types are in your reading. And you have got to classify your reading into different categories, okay? I'm going to do bubbles that float. I'm going to do one example for you, okay? So that'll kind of leave you with the other two to work through. And if you can think of another example from your reading, I want you to do it under this part too, okay? Let me put down my camera for just a minute. Well, I can't ever get my markers open with one hand. Okay, bubbles that float. One example that I saw of bubbles that float in our reading was in the swimming pool. So in the swimming pool, there was a boy. It's hard to write with one hand. But in the swimming pool, if we have a pool of water and there's a little boy under there swimming, this is him swimming and he's kicking his feet. Kick, 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 kick. This is him swimming and he blows bubbles. Those bubbles are going to float up to the surface. Okay, so that is an example of bubbles that float. I want you to see if you can find another example of bubbles that float. If not, you can use mine. And then I want you to tell me bubbles that stick and bubbles in solids. I'm going to flip this real quick. You'll have to look at it sideways on your computer. But here are the headings that you need for your sheet today. Okay, so pause this and copy it down and look in your reading and answer these categories for me. Okay, and then submit a picture of your work.